Welcome to the sanctuary. I'm Kyle, and I'm here to tell you, never be afraid to step into the pleasure den of the absurd. Now, tonight, we're going to talk about two controversial Jimi Hendrix LPs that were released in 1974 and 1975, respectively. And the first one is this one, Crash Landing. A very interesting album, and one that Hendrix fans do enjoy, no matter how notorious and controversial it is. So, in order to understand why, here's a brief synopsis of where the Jimi Hendrix estate was in 1974, such as it was. So when Jimmy died in 1970, he had a manager, and this was his business manager. His name was Michael Jeffrey, and they both had an interest in Electric Lady Studios, and Warner Brothers had the contract for Jimmy's recordings. And so Jimmy passed away. Michael Jeffries is running things and enlists Eddie Kramer and Mitch Mitchell to finish up a bunch of albums, which they did. And so they released a few studio albums. The first one being The Cry of Love, and then the soundtrack to Rainbow Bridge, then War Heroes, and a fourth collection of studio recordings that I don't believe was ever released in the US. In the UK and other countries and territories, yes, that one was called Loose Ends. And so then Michael Jeffries died in a plane crash. And so I'm not quite sure how. I don't recall how. But this other guy by the name of Alan Douglas took over the Hendrix estate. You're probably asking yourself, well, who the hell is Alan Douglas? Well, in 1969, Alan Douglas was a record producer. He had interests in recordings, and he did some stuff with John McLaughlin, and did some comedy albums and whatnot, and was involved in the recording business, and being that Jimmy was playing in New York a lot in 1969, he asked Alan Douglas, who he was introduced to. I can't exactly remember how, but he asked Alan to sort of act as a de facto producer, in a way, to oversee some recording sessions that Jimmy was doing. And these sessions were very loose during this time period. Jimmy was jamming a lot in the studio, but some of the ideas that he was working on would really come to fruition, in 1970. But at this time, he was kind of in a limbo. Eddie Kramer was kind of out of the scene. He had kind of left Jimmy to his own devices. And so, this guy, Alan Douglas, was, not going to turn down an opportunity to work with Jimi Hendrix, So that's where he came in to play. And somehow or another, he came back in, probably because he had, he may have retained some of the tapes that he helped oversee the recording of, or maybe he just wanted to get back at those. But in any case, Alan Douglas had a plan once he took over the estate. So in 1974, Alan Douglas began work on creating a new Jimi Hendrix album. Now, what his intent kind of was to take some of the recordings of Hendrix and replace the original players, in some cases all of them, in some cases maybe retaining the bass and drums, or maybe just the drums. But his idea was to, as he saw it, create pop songs, or, you know, some viable recordings. He tried to enhance these Hendrix recordings, you know, with studio players, and to kind of like add other guitars that maybe Jimmy wasn't able to add himself, right? So this is where the album Crash Landing comes into play. And so this is the album of the cover, the album of the cover, the cover of the album, as it was released in 1974. And I'll just run down the names of the tracks. There's only 8 songs on here. Some of the titles may be familiar to diehard Hendrix fans. It opens up with Message to Love, goes into Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Crash Landing, Come Down Hard on Me, which was previously released via Mike Jeffrey on that LP Loose Ends that was never released in the United States. Side 2 would open with a song called Peace in Mississippi. Goes into With the Power, Stone Free Again, and then ends with a track called Captain Coconut. So there's only 3 songs on this album that actually contain, other than Jimmy, some original members of the musicians that were on these recordings. I'll just run down a couple here. Message to Love, right? You heard this song on the Band of Gypsys album. This is the studio version, and it has Jimmy on guitar and vocal, Billy Cox on bass, and Buddy Miles on drums. It credits Buddy Miles as doing the other voices, but I do believe it was Jimmy, Buddy, and Billy. Who knows if it was really just Buddy Miles or the 3 of them on this one anyway. And it includes a guy named Jimmy Mullen on percussion. So the other track to have the real musicians on it is With the Power. Again, you would know this song as Power of Soul from the live Band of Gypsys album. And it does have the Band of Gypsys on here. It's Jimmy on guitar and vocal, Billy Cox on bass, Buddy Miles on drums. This credits Buddy Miles and Jimi Hendrix with the voices, the backup voices. And it also has studio musician Jimmy Mullen on percussion, which was added to it. And the only other song to have an original musician from the original recording is this composite track called Captain Coconut, which has Jimmy on guitar, Billy Cox on bass, and here's where they add a studio drummer, Alan Schwartzberg, on drums, and Jimmy Mullen plays a slinky. Now, So that's 1, 2, 3 songs right there. The other 5 on this album contains all studio musicians. So on these other 5 songs, Somewhere Over the Rainbow has Jeff Mironoff on another guitar, Bob Babbitt on bass, and Alan Schwartzberg on drums. Alan Schwartzberg plays drums on all these tracks, except for the Bandit Gypsy tracks. Crash Landing has Jeff Mironoff again on second guitar, Bob Babbitt on bass, Schwartzberg on drums, Jimmy Mule on percussion, and it adds 3 ladies on backup voices: Linda November, Vivian Cherry, and Barbara Massey. So basically, the rhythm section of Mironoff, Babbitt, Schwartzberg, Mulin are all on these songs here. And that's what makes it kind of controversial. Now, so with Stone Free Again, this song was actually a studio version from 1968 of the original experience. Noel Redding, Mitch Mitchell, and Jimmy just going into the studio and redoing the song, but it had a lot of guitar overdubs, and it's pretty furious, I must say. And it is replicated pretty well on here. And so that's the thing here is, with this album, you got a couple songs that are already familiar to fans via the Bandit Gypsies album. And you got Stone Free Again. Come Down Hard on Me was released in 73, I think it was, on that album Loose Ends. Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Crash Landing, and Piece of Mississippi, and Captain Coconut were all sort of new. And the thing about this album, again, is the fact that Alan Douglas took off the original musicians that played on these studio tracks, and he wanted to, enhance these songs, these recordings with studio musicians, and it kind of does have a dry studio sound to it, but for the most part, a lot of people liked it. When it was released at the time, I know quite a few Hendrix fans who really do like this album. Would I recommend it for somebody to listen to? I would, just for the sake of hearing it. I'll just quick run down the notes. Brad Baker was musical direction. Shaggy Dog Studios, Stockbridge, Massachusetts was pre-production. Les Kahn, engineer. Media Sound, New York production. Tony Bongiovi, Ron St. Germain were the engineers. Track Recorders, Washington, D.C. was production. Ken Schaefer, public relations. Richard Peters did the cover illustration. Barry Wenzel did the liner photo. Craig Braun did the album design. It was a DePaja Enterprises limited production. Alan Douglas, Tony Bongiovi producers for Douglas Producing Company in 1974. Alan Douglas did a huge campaign, promotion campaign for this album, and became quite a big seller. Like I say, it was popular. And he followed it up the next year, doing the same thing, using studio musicians, the same studio musicians, the same approach for a new set of songs for this album, Midnight Lightning, 1975. Now, I'll read you the track listing off of this album. Like I say, it has the same musicians as Crash Landing. It opens up with a song called Trash Man, then goes into Midnight Lightning. Then it goes into a song called Hear My Train, which is really just Hear My Train A-Comin'. But this one does have Mitch Mitchell on drums, and Alan Schwartzberg does the shaker. Then it goes into a track called Gypsy Boy. And that ends side one. Gypsy Boy being a sort of slightly out of tune demo, if you could call it that. It's just sort of a jam that would turn into Hey Baby, New Rising Sun that you would hear on Rainbow Bridge. But I'll continue on now with side two. Opens up with Blue Suede Shoes. Goes into Machine Gun. Once I Had a Woman. And Beginnings. Midnight Lightning was played live at the Isle of Wight concert. Hear My Train A-Comin'. Was on Rainbow Bridge, which was a live performance from Berkeley, 1970. Gypsy Boy would turn into Hey Baby, New Rising Sun. Blue Suede Shoes was released on Loose Ends, that album from 1973 that was never released in the United States. Machine Gun was performed in the studio a few times by Hendrix, and this is one of them. Once I Had a Woman is a good blues. And Beginnings is also known as Jam Back at the House, which the Gypsy Sons and Rainbows played at Woodstock. Now, would I recommend this album to listen to? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird. It's like, it's like, should I watch Plan 9 from Outer Space for Bela Lugosi? Even though he's only in a few scenes and replaced by a double. Should I watch The Game of Death from 1978, where at times they superimpose Bruce Lee's face over the actor that's supposed to be playing him, it's one of these things. I mean, let's put it this way. Alan Douglas tried to create an album of songs that were somewhat complete, maybe complete. Either way, he felt that he had to intervene with new studio musicians. And in any case, I think out of the two, Crash Landing might have been more successful. However, I will refer you to the book, a really good book about Jimi Hendrix, written by Eddie Kramer and John McDermott. It's called Setting the Record Straight. And they have a whole chapter with detailed information on the making of these two albums. They interview a lot of the studio musicians involved, and they have a lot of factual information, again, about how these were made. And, like I say, Should you listen to them? No, but it's kind of like a curiosity now. I don't know. Maybe you can kind of get a sense of how I feel about these, because it is they are what they are, and I mean, let's put it this way too. I'll do a secondary video later that documents on when Alan Douglas lost control of the Hendrix estate after 20 years. Jimi Hendrix's half-sister took control and has had control of the estate since, I think, 1995, maybe 94. But in any case, since then, since the Hendrix family took over the estate, they have released just about all of the original studio recordings, damn near, and so again, a lot of the new albums that have been released are retreads of the old ones. And with that, I want to thank you for watching. I kind of didn't expect this video to go on so long, but it is what it is. And have you listened? Have you heard these albums? Are you a fan of either one or both of these albums? Please let me know in the comments. Like I say, I know people that really do enjoy Crash Landing that are Hendrix fans, and you know, it's now that we have the original recordings to listen to, which ones do you prefer? Do you prefer the original versions of these songs, or do you appreciate what Alan Douglas was trying to do with these? I don't know. You tell me. That's what the comment section is for. And again, I want to thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please click the like button. And if you really like what we do, is just set the camera down and look into it, hold stuff up and talk about it. Well then, you know, subscribe to the channel, click all notifications. You'll always know when a new video arrives, and you know what to do. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Yes, that's right. And again, I want to thank you all for watching. Listen to Jimi Hendrix. Talk to me in the comments. Hey, if you want to email me, I got an email in the description of this video in which you can contact me. Hey, and if you even want to donate to this channel, make a request, well, I got a PayPal link in the description. And you can always go, feel free to do that. And again, you're great. So's Jimi Hendrix. Listen to Hendrix. I love him. He's great. And I want to tell you that you are always welcome to visit me here in the Pleasure Den of the Absurd.